Hey, if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I don't know why I'm doing this. Alright, so first let me say that I am petrified of needles. Like, that is no joke, alright? I have a tattoo already, and it was such a mission to get, alright? Having said that, I'm issuing a tattoo challenge. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, what is that? Well, there's a link in the description below. Please go check it out. It's called the Tattoo Challenge. In a nutshell, if you guys can get me to 5,000k subscribers before the 16th of August, I'm gonna get a tattoo chosen by you guys. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I decided to do this. Having said that, enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Let's Talk. And tonight I am joined by a very interesting individual. I'm gonna try and pronounce his whole name. Please excuse me. Mbulelo Kailetu Tinta.
Oh, let's go, Joe. Let's go. All right, let's go. Stuck the landing.
I really tried. Stuck the landing. You give me a 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10.
Oh, hey, that's pushing it. Listen, you got the landing. Maybe you're not Simone Biles, but you got the landing.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, Mbulelo, who is, you might recognize the voice if you frequent cliffcentral.com. He's a co-host on that show. He also is a presenter of sports on that show. So Mbulelo, just very briefly, tell my viewers who you are.
Well, I am a man, Joe. I am just a man, a simple man who's trying to get along in this complicated world. Thank you so much, firstly, for having me on your show. I mean, we had the pleasure of having you on our show, and that was very interesting. So I'm honored to be on your show. It's an absolute pleasure. So for myself, a South African man, and I come from a science background in terms of my training in college or university, depending which part of the world you live in. But I'm a sports nut, an absolute nut. And I'm somebody who I just can't get enough of it. I love American sports, our football, which is soccer. So I'm crazy about that. And I'm huge on health and wellness. Huge. That is at the center of my life. So that runs my life, actually. Mm-hmm. So I wake up sort of 3:30, 4 a.m. every day. I work out. I run every day. So that's at the center of my life. But far more than that is I really enjoy engaging in my private space, the thoughts of ideology. How do we live? Who do we live with? Why do we live the way we live? These are the things that get me going, because that shapes the way we work, the reason we work, how industry is shaped around us. And, as we'll get into, that we've created that hasn't just happened on its own. And that is extremely interesting to me, because at the end, we're all just people.
Exactly. Well, I like what I'm hearing so far. So let's get right into it. As you guys have seen, the title of the show, or the topic for the show, is Marxism, Communism, and the Dallas Cowboys. We'll probably get into the Dallas Cowboys a bit later. But when I was, as Mbulelo mentioned, I was on Cliff Central not too long ago, and Mbulelo actually came out and said that he's a Marxist, he's a communist. And that really perked my ears, because I never really had an opportunity, as far as I know, at least I don't think people advertise very much that they are Marxists or communists. They don't go around shouting it. So I thought, hey, let's have a conversation about that, because I have yet to have someone on the show that believes in those ideologies. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions from the people who are watching. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we'll answer them. So, Mbulelo, I guess the best way to start is, how do you define communism and Marxism, and why do you support it?
First and foremost, I just wanted to make it very clear that I always have my Bible with me. I'm not sure if you're getting that.
Yes.
The manifesto of all manifestos. So, Joe, I think it's really important, when we speak about things this serious, is we're always looking for the extremes, right? And I hate to sort of marginalize you, but you come from a country where you really have two options when you vote, which means, it's white or black, or red or blue in your instance. And I don't think you can take life seriously if that's everything in your life is a zero-sum game, because the human condition is not that way. We're not either all the way that way, or either. Nobody is that in terms of anything. So before we start off, let me be very clear that it's important to establish I don't believe in the extremities of life, because most of life happens in the middle. So the reason, though, I believe that Marxism, and the way I understand and have read, and of course Das Kapital being Marx's greatest work, is that the beauty of Marxism is it is the only, there is no other economic theory that puts the value of humanity at the center. That is why it is so romantic to me. So it is the only one that isn't purely based on the economics. It is first human-centric, or homo-centric, if you will. So that is my huge attraction to Marxism. And my understanding of it, of course, is it's always going to be what's in here that's always quoted, ironically, in the modern term. But I think that's extremely unfair in thinking that, as with all academic subjects, it's excellent to critique Marx. And when we look at Marx, we always just critique, and he's always presented as somebody who had economic theories, and that was it. But fundamentally, what Marx was a philosopher and a historian. Mm-hmm. That was his fundamental tenet. The economics came, and I always say the victory for communism will always be that capitalism paid for communism, because Engels, the man who co-wrote the book, came from the gentry and the bourgeoisie, and his family owned a cotton factory in Manchester. So, this is about the theory of it more than worrying about the old school arguments. Is, guys, let's accept, whether you're capitalist, socialist, whatever you call yourself, the 20th century is over, and capitalists and my fellow people that call themselves Marxists or communists must accept the 20th century is over. The Marxist and communist ways that we had hoped for failed drastically. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the examples. I'm sure you'll have a few examples as to why would I go with this madness if we've seen certain examples. But Marxism, for me, it is as simple as it is the only economic theory that even purports to care about people. So that for me is why I'm a proponent and will always push people to go and at least look at it.
Well, that's interesting. I have looked at it in preparation for the show, and I've took it in history. As you mentioned, there are a few examples of, and there's someone disliking the video right now.
Let's go. Floyd Mayweather always said, whether they come to see you win or lose, either way they pay. Either way is collect.
All right, so let me just say, I'm not trying to promote Marxism. I'm even not trying to promote capitalism right now. I want to have an open discussion about this. I feel that that's healthy. And you seem to be very versed in Marxism, and I mean, you have the Bible there right with you. So what I was going to say is, let's talk very quickly about the failures of communism and stuff like that. We know the biggest one is USSR. Everyone says that millions died, millions were starving, and stuff like that. And I know you made a point like, hey, 20th century's over, the failures we cannot ignore. Okay, fine. So
I'm not saying we must ignore them. Sorry, let me be clear. We must analyze them. The theory is important.
Okay, but that's
so I'm happy to get into.
But that's the thing. It's a theory. It's nothing. It's nothing that has been implemented and been successful. It's been tried by many different countries, and it's failed. So yes, you can push and say, look, I like the ideology because it focuses on the human aspect of it, and it's fair, if you want to put it that way. But now, how can you get people to invest in that? Excuse the pun. To when there's so many examples where it's failed. What, in your opinion, has led to those failures?
Sure. I think when we analyze it, Joe, it's so romantic to always go, socialism and communism has killed so many people. What people conveniently do, right, is you leave out the totalitarianism part. And there has been this insidious narrative, instead of looking at the two separately, of totalitarianism and communism are not the same thing. Now, we have to be honest, and I have to be honest, you don't shy away from things, yes, communism and the socialist ideals created the room. It needed the jet fuel, and the only one that it could coincide with, unfortunately, in the world we've lived in, is totalitarianism. So those are not the same thing. Totalitarianism did all of these horrible things. These men weren't communists or socialists. They were monsters. And that is, so let's not conflate the two. And I think because it's such an impassioned conversation always, we make that mistake intellectually, right? And there is what we call a cognitive dissonance there. When we put the two together, we conflate the two as though they're the same thing. They are not. So let's be very clear that totalitarianism killed the hundreds of millions in China and the USSR.
Well, yeah, let me correct myself as well, because I had an interview not too long ago with, what's his name? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Quentin Ferreira, where we discussed Marxism versus free markets. And in there, we discussed that we did agree that something we feel that Marx didn't take into consideration is the human factor of everything. That greed gets in the way, like you just said, totalitarian.
We'll
that
get
word.
Yeah.
And corruption, because let's bring it home. Let's be honest, like you said, it's happening right here in South Africa. There's a push for communism, but at the same time, it's masked by equal. Everybody's going to be equal. Everyone's going to have this utopia and all that stuff. But we're seeing it now, the greed of the ANC and all that. So, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I think we must also be very clear that the greed part is part of the human thing. So even in capitalism, that happens.
Fair enough.
So
yes.
let's not pretend that if we and we'll come back to the free market conversation and whether we think there is such a thing, is that that's going to happen anyway. The corruption and all of that is going to happen anyway. But now, when the corruption happens and there's totalitarianism, we've seen the mess that heads down. And I don't want to get into a 19th, 20th century conversation about being iffy about whether communism, we could tweak it a little bit. Is even critics of Marx and people who love take away the good parts is, listen, Marx got it wrong. And you've mentioned it. He got the human part wrong. Is that our inclinations is when we create industry, we'll head a certain way. Now, what he got correct was the criticism of what he saw as the bourgeois versus the elite thing. So I also want to come to that, and I don't know, maybe if you're going to get to that. I think we need to be careful about just taking out the good parts of capitalism that have survived, because we're quite good at this, right? As people, is recency bias. Is we always take of this whatever has survived, is we take the good ideas of that has survived, and we never go, oh no, the other one's filled with lots of troubles too. That Marx has critiqued, and we are seeing more and more. And one of the big critiques, and if we're doing I don't know whether we want to go capitalism versus communism. I don't know if that's how you want to frame the conversation, but is that within the capitalist structure, it is imbibed in there is crisis.
Oh, yeah.
There is not so, and every time it happens, we get shocked. The Great Depression, we got shocked, right? What was it? 2008, we got shocked, but it is imbibed into the system that at some stage it has become so good at producing things. We have a problem where our problem isn't we're short of things. My God, we don't know how to share all of them. And that for me is the important thing here, Joe. The reason I'm Marxist is it is a framework to critique. It is what we've got to keep shackled on capitalism. Otherwise, we've seen where that can go in the 18th and 19th century. And I don't know why we keep wanting to live in that world. It's not to say one should replace another, but we need a critique model. And I have not found a better critique model than a Marxist sort of philosophical standpoint.
It's interesting that you put it that way, a critique on capitalism and maybe keeping it in check. Look, you're right. That's something that I also didn't forget to mention in that interview that I mentioned before. Is capitalism definitely has its problems. There's cronyism, there's corruption, there's all that stuff. It's just interesting to me that capitalism has managed to survive. The free market has managed to survive throughout the centuries. And every time Marxism comes into play, or versions thereof it, like you said, there's a difference. I know there's a difference between I'm going to get this word by the end of the stream.
Yeah. Listen, the best way to learn a simple task is repetition.
Yeah. Tell that to your Marxist friends.
Very good.
You see, here's the thing. I totally hear where you're coming from, because I've mentioned this before. Marxism absolutely has great qualities in terms of the idea of a utopia where everybody's equal, everybody earns has the same thing. But I think maybe this is something we should quickly mention because I want people to understand that you're not a woke.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
I will not be considered liberal or woke. No.
Yes. That's very important to mention because Mbulelo is definitely against cancel culture. I don't know where you fall on any other like opinions in terms of like pro-choice or anything like that, but I wouldn't regard you as a woke, which is also why I'm having this conversation with you because I know that you're open-minded enough to have this conversation, whereas the extreme left would just be, enforcing it. And I think that what I would like to try and understand, yes, we understand Marxism and communism have can be romanticized and romantic and all that stuff. In your opinion, though, let's take South Africa as an example. Let's bring it home. In your opinion, in all the work and all the studies that you've done about it and everything that you've researched, do you honestly think that South Africa could be a better place if it implemented those ideologies?
As they were when Marx wrote them, or as a modern day version of those? Because I think we need to be careful once again is whenever we talk about ideologies we don't like, we always refer to them in the form that they were when they were written. And with the ideology that suits us, of course, that can evolve. So is there a suggestion that
so maybe
is there,
explain the current definition of or the current ideology, the modern Marxism, if you will, because that's something I don't know about.
Sure. So I think what everybody needs to accept is there is no system as dynamic as capitalism for distributing wealth. Let's all accept that. I think we can all say that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right now, but we also need to, in the same breath, say it's not perfect. What my thoughts are these: is that France is still rather functional, and if you were going to say to them, "Are you? How do you consider yourself?" and you look at the patterns, the economic patterns of how France has been built over the last 250 years, it is unashamedly socialist. It is functional, and then you go to the Scandinavians, and history is important. Is they got one thing right before they got rich, is that you have to have democracy. And what does democracy have to have? You've got to eradicate corruption early if you want to build something in the modern society. So before I even worry about what ideology will work, Joe, is we need to establish two things are non-negotiable, right? Opportunity and no corruption. And then I say yes, because look at Sweden, look at Norway. Those are not miracles. Those took 800 years, yes, but those are not miracles. Those are things that are happening. France is happening and continues to be a very domineering member of the G8. So I say yes in the modern sense, because we see many of Marx's kind of thoughts, and we see that even in the most capitalist of worlds. It is there. Canada, everybody loves Canada. Everybody loves America. There's a lot of socialist ideas, whether you like them or not, if you want to have this conversation in a polarized manner. Within the very systems we say socialism could never work, we are the beneficiaries of socialism in the most unbridled capitalist country. So I absolutely think it can work in South Africa, but it cannot happen where there is no democracy and there is corruption. Then it's a non-starter. So are we presuming there's a dream world where South Africa eradicates 80% of the corruption?
Well, I mean, if we're talking in theories.
then yes. Then, Joe, absolutely. I think, maybe let's go back a little bit. I think it's really important for people to understand one thing, is we've been sold, and I believe wrongly, that if you left human beings to their devices, this is what happens, right? So Marx would argue, no, human beings are actually terribly adapted to nature, because the argument is always the nature argument, right? Is if you want to be the machismo capitalist, is you argue this is nature, this is the way we've evolved. Quite wrong. Marx might say we have shaped this world, right, through something we call labor. So this is not the natural world. We now are in a societal trap. So we've left the nature trap where we're exposed to the elements because we've figured out through labor. We can build houses, and if I'm nice to Joe, actually, it probably makes sense because then the wolf won't come and eat me, and he'll start a fire. And we've kind of figured that out. But we have made nature bend at the knee to us. So we have shaped this. This is not natural, what we're living in now. This is a societal construct, is what you might call it. I'm sure a term you've heard from many of the left. But as we experience the world now, it is a societal construct. It is not naturally this way. So we must always be careful of going, it would have ended up this way. No. We have chosen to go this way. And in the last 200 years, I don't know if we've had another option. So I really do worry once we look at capitalism as the final solution. I think we mustn't be stupid and go, oh, if you say no to capitalism, it means you want to live in the USSR. That's complete madness. And that's not useful. But I cannot go unbridled capitalism when I have a form of critique where, my God, we keep having inflation. So we have too many goods that people can't afford. When are we going to realize that that's a problem? And there is no better critique than perhaps, I don't know whether maybe you want to have a question, or maybe let me finish that point.
Finish the point.
Is that, we kind of have, I'm not sure if you're aware of a guy called Francis Fukuyama, right? So your classic modern day liberal sort of capitalist. And what he says, if you're Fukuyamist, what you say is, listen, capitalism is fine. What we need to do is just tweak a few things here and there. It's and then you always argue, yes, more people have risen in through capitalism, and the poverty eradication and alleviation's higher, and that's another conversation we can have. But we know this is a problem because all we're doing is delaying the next crisis, right? And the Fukuyamists will tell you, yes, but capitalism's kind of working and it works slowly. No, we have a crisis. And we can see that for most of the world, unless you live in the cornucopia. And for me, that's a huge, huge problem.
I feel like that, it's good points that you're raising. But again, I'm stuck on the whole thing of, you mentioned Sweden, or was it Sweden?
Sweden. Norway, France.
Norway, France. They all have Canada. They all have a mix of capitalism and socialism. But again, it's not a true form, I think, of Marxism or communism. And I don't think, if we go back to Marxism when he first wrote that book, it's what led to communism. So it would need to go to the state would take control, and then eventually give over the control to the civilians, in a sense, and everybody works for themselves and stuff like that. Everybody owns everything, and we haven't seen that, and I don't think we're ever going to see that. Now, I understand what you're saying. Like, okay, there's a modern version of Marxism now, which is like, cool, we can take some of the faults of capitalism, and maybe the answer to those faults are in Marxism. I can get behind that. I can definitely get behind that, because again, we've seen Sweden, France, some countries are surviving. But there are some people out there that would say the economy isn't doing as good as you may think. Apparently, I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'll need to get someone on the show to debate that with me, or with us, whatever. But I think the question here is, again, do you think that these ideologies can work in South Africa? I don't feel like you've answered that question completely.
Look, I think it's very, very difficult for them to work in these circumstances. So my answer is, as you have them in this book, absolutely not. Because the problem is that the other machine is at play, right? Is we are now bridled with capitalism's the only way. And so no, I have to be honest, is we have to be realistic, is this wasn't made for 6-7 billion people when Marx wrote it as he wrote it. So I just always need to be clear. Are you asking me, because Marxism has been refreshed a couple of times in theory. You must remember, so the reason it's called a theory, by the way, communism and socialism have never actually fully been applied anywhere. There's a reason why those are called theories, just so people understand. So, and those have evolved. And just as capitalism tries to do, you have Smith and you have Keynesian economics, These things evolve. So in the modern sense, I absolutely feel it can. I absolutely feel it can. Now, you're asking me probably two different questions. Is, do I think we have the people in this country with the appetite for it? Because it's a brutal process to go Marxist. So I do. I absolutely believe. I absolutely believe it. And we must never go, we want to replace capitalism, because that's not the game. That's not, I'm not interested in that game. What I'm interested is in better, more Marxist ideals infused into an already capitalism 1.0, so a system that's already rolling, but is in terrible shape. Terrible shape.
So so you want what I mentioned earlier just now. You would like to see capitalism infused a little bit with Marxist views, maybe where capitalism falls short. Is that correct in saying that?
Other way around.
Other way
I'd
around.
like to see a little bit of capitalism infused into the Marxist model, if anything, if you're going to make me answer it like that. So no, not capitalism at the center, because we've seen it doesn't work. I don't know how many more crises we need in order to see that it does not work for everybody. And you know what's been an interesting thing for me to observe in lockdown is, and we're going to use two lovely Marxist terms here, is everybody has seen just how close you are to being the proletariat and not the bourgeoisie. And we lived in this idyllic, my God, the system is for us and it is the only way to spread wealth. You look at your own country right now. How many people are now realizing, my God, I'm on my own? And you know what Marx's greatest criticism was of the capitalist system is how replaceable people felt. And now we're starting to see, we have never seen it like this. And a system being exposed, like, this is not the model, people. Because all it took was 3 months off. And my God, what was it? 30 million lost jobs.
Yeah, but I think we're gonna. Okay, so I gotta stop you there, because South Africa never really had a true capitalist society or economy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but let's be honest. BEE doesn't make it a free market. It doesn't. You are discriminating.
Sorry, I meant America, by the way.
Oh, America. Oh, I thought you were
Sorry,
talking
I
about
said
South
America.
Africa.
No, oh, no. South Africa doesn't even have 33 million jobs.
That's true.
Sorry, I said America. Excuse me if I didn't say America. I meant you look at America, because I think that's the great machine we always look at, right? Is they are self-proclaimed the leaders of the world in that sense. And look at how precarious this thing is. And we treat this like it's a game. This is not a game. 33 million jobs lost and people being out, and infused within that is anxiety like we've never known before. Is what more do we need to see? 2008, yes. This again, yes. Everybody is starting to realize, Joe, and I don't care how ardent a neoliberal capitalist you are, right? Is we're starting to realize how close we are, on the precipice we are, to bring the proletariat. 33 million jobs in America like that.
Yeah, but that's not a fault of capitalism. That's a fault of a pandemic. I'm sorry. You even if we were in a Marxist society, I don't think it would have been in any different situation. And we can't argue that, because we're not in a Marxist society. We only know the capitalist side of it because we're in a capitalist society. So you can't. I feel like that argument is a bit weak. Sorry.
Interesting you say that. China seemed to have had done okay in terms of maintaining their jobs. Now,
that we know of.
Yeah, that we know. Russia seems to have done okay, hang on to their jobs. And I used to live in Russia, so I'm not just speaking from a bias. And also, we should have probably led with this, is I'm not like anti-America, pro-China. I'm not into it, right? If you're a politician, I have my grave suspicions of you at all times. Let me be very clear. Government, I suspect them at all times. They need to, as citizens, they should be constantly earning our loyalty. We shouldn't be ever deferring and saying, thank you, oh Lord Jesus, any politician worldwide. So to be clear, I just want to state my position. I do not fall on either side. I'm not, there's no romanticism for me. But when you look at the capitalist system, actually, isn't it interesting? And this is a numbers game. The best implementation of capitalism, and this is where my next problem as what I might consider Monday Marxist comes, is the best implementation actually of capitalism is brutal communism and totalitarianism. If you look at the world now and you want to do capitalism properly, where do you go? You don't go to America. Where do you go? China. China does capitalism better than anybody. Totalitarianism wins because capitalism cannot abide inefficiency. And the most inefficient animal on this planet is human beings. You get sad, you get sick, your girlfriend leaves you, you can't pitch for work. Capitalism doesn't care about that nonsense. You are replaceable, get out the way. Which is why it's so interesting, that totalitarian state. You look at Russia right now, they've got Europe by the balls because they go, you want those natural gases in Siberia, and we're seeing the problems. Listen, their upward trend of economics in the last 15 years is like nothing we've seen in the Western world, probably ever. China is the miracle economically of human existence. So you see, these are the warning flags that I look at, Joe, as...
Yeah, but some people would argue that capitalism is what saved China, because there was a point where millions died because of their implementation of communism. So, I mean, they also did some weird things in their economy where they put land aside so that there could be investment from overseas. And it's almost like, okay, cool, this land is only for the investors so that they can bring in their business, and almost like, again, fueled... almost like they were building capital for their country. So China is a very interesting country. I'm not gonna lie, but it feels like there's a lot of I don't know. They wish-wash between the two. Like, they use communism and they use capitalism as they see fit.
Well, do you know their term? Their term is socialism with Chinese characteristics. And it is at this stage where I might like to recommend a book for your readers and maybe for yourself, if you'd like to understand the tensions between China and America right now, and probably a wonderful illustration of the two ideologies we're discussing now, a socialist Marxism versus capitalism. It is a book by a guy called Graham Allison, and he talks about Thucydides' trap, right? And it is destined for war. He talks about Thucydides' trap. This Thucydides, very interesting Greek historian, and he detailed the Peloponnesian Wars. And we're seeing it now, even as we're talking about these two ideologies. Sorry, I'm going off on a bit of another rant. I'm a philosophy buff. But he talks about in the Peloponnesian Wars, when the Athenians took on, of course, the famous movie 300. I'm sure you've seen it.
Yes.
Yeah. So in this, it is the Athenians against this tiny little warrior nation. But in that war, he says, in the moment when the incumbent is taken over by the rising power, which we see with China kind of, rubbing up against. But there is a moment when the incumbent is passed by the new power, right? So China, as it goes past, there is a tension moment. And that is called the Thucydides trap. And in that moment, there can be nothing but violence. And I think we're seeing this now in the world, Joe. More and more people are leaning towards community. More and more people are leaning towards a world where capital is not king. And hey, there's nothing more Marxist than that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, it's we can compare America, but I haven't lived there in years, so I'm not comfortable with talking about America. I would recommend that Chris Wyatt maybe come and give his 2 cents on that.
Sure.
What I want to do is try and stick to South Africa, because in South Africa right now, right, there is what seems to be a type of, dare I say, political war. And without getting too much into politics, my worry, the EWC, the NHI, all those things, which are very communist ideologies that we can't ignore.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you said that it probably wouldn't work, the communism and all that stuff here. But as a Marxist and as someone who believes in these ideologies, where do you stand for South Africa then? Like, are you on the EFF side? Are you on the ANC side? Are you DA? And I'm not saying that means you would vote for them, but I mean in terms of their ideologies. Do you believe are you in that camp of like, yes, we must give the land back, and because that's also like, it feels like the EFF kind of took that from a Marxist point of view as well, the whole equality debacle and stuff like that. What's your opinion on all that? Bring it home. What's your opinion on South Africa?
All right. So sorry, we're going to talk about South Africa. So I think, Joe, you know what excites me about being in South Africa at the moment is these politicians don't realize one thing, is that they think it's 1980 and that South Africans can't see how things work in America, how things work in Norway. Is that we know, we're not stupid. We can see that politicians are losing power like this. And I even mean the poorest person kind of knows that no longer is a politician's promise. It's taken 26, 27 years where when it's time to vote, you go to the polls and you take them a plate of food and you take an ANC t-shirt. I make no qualms about that. We cannot. It is irresponsible. It would be intellectually corrupt of me to even suggest that our current government could run a bath. Forget about an economic system. So for God's sake, forgive me. I will not put that on their shoulders. They could barely count to 10. I am not putting the work of these two great gentlemen in their arms. But if we could start again, right? Can we start again? I believe in the nature of South Africa. Is that, Joe, we live in a time where we understand the most dynamic way is you have to have a strong economic system. And the Marxist notion is not efficient enough. Let's not romanticize this thing. But what I will not do is follow the same mistakes that I believe the West and the global North have made, is you put the money at the center and the people second. I do not foresee that being a good long-term option. Do the guillotines maybe need to come out, whether proverbial or literal, for our politicians? Joe, I'm not against that. We've had enough now in South Africa. Is Marxism going to work? I think is the question you asked me. It breaks my heart. It breaks my absolute heart, to be honest. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It cannot and it will not work. I don't know if the proviso of the ANC, but I guess you're putting my feet to the fire. I have to cower and crumble and say, in theory, yes, but in reality, I'm also a realist. Like I said, I'm a modern day Marxist. I will not apologize about my communist and Marxist notions as particularly as critical theory, because we need the theory sometimes. As capitalists, I know we love to do and like, hey, look, but we need the theory to critique what's happening. So it's a very long way to tell you absolutely not. And this government cannot be trusted with anything. I would not trust them with a 10 cents piece of bubblegum.
Look, this is why I wanted to have the conversation with you, because I knew that you were going to be, no matter what, honest, but still stick to your ideologies. Just like I'm going to stick to my ideologies. And I think this is a very good conversation, because at the end of the day, even though you might believe in the things you believe and I believe in the things I believe, I'm not going to hate you for it. I'm not going to try and cancel you for it. I'm not going to try and force you to believe my way, and you're not going to force me to believe your way. But having a discussion about it may lead to some interesting, how can I say, maybe a compromise or some ideas that are floating around. I can see in the comments there's a lot of people that don't like what you're saying.
Excellent. but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But that's the thing. I think some people believe that if you're Marxist or communist, then you're 100% behind the ANC, and I think you've proven that. Dare I say, I guess anyone with an education might be able to, or not an education, but just like you said, people in South Africa are seeing it. Even the poorest of the poor are seeing it, and it doesn't matter what ideology you fall in. People are being hurt by this government, and whether you're Marxist, capitalist, communist, whatever, the government needs to be held accountable for what they're doing.
I think we're suffering from a tremendous lack of imagination as a global society. I said it at the beginning, and I will say it again. The 20th century is over. Why do we still give a stuff about national borders? We know that doesn't make sense anymore. We're on Skype now. There's probably somebody in Lithuania watching this. Money should be sort of free to flow. So here's the interesting thing about me, about the current situation for me, and why it's so exciting to be South African right now, Joe, is take whatever ideology you want, plug it in. But what's great about it is that we have an opportunity where, for the first time ever, right, politicians don't need to be at the center. The people can be at the center. And by that, I obviously don't mean I want any Tom, Dick, and Harry being the president. By that, I mean is we don't have to try the crap that has put us in this place again. Whether we're imaginative enough to go big government is not the solution, right? functional government is. Norway, functional. Tiny government, functional. Canada, small government. Trudeau and the boys, great hair, by the way, Justin Trudeau, but small government, functional. So, and then I promise you, we get kind of lost in the woods across the world. Is we get obsessed with politicians, and we forget that they need to be effective. Instead of just being there, they must be, are they effective? And in Africa and in South Africa, I will no longer apologize for something I love, which is my continent, and we've got it terribly, terribly wrong. And in the great Marxist sort of notions, is everything is second if you cannot run the economy. All of this becomes, for lack of a better term, mental ejaculation if we cannot run an economy. And the economy ideally should be based on what we might say in modern day terms, left-leaning Marxist ideals in my ideal world. And I'd love to debate with anybody as to why. I don't know if we've got time for that.
We do have time. We got about 20 minutes. So if you want, you can say why.
Yeah, look, I don't think we're honest about the systems that govern us currently. Is we will continue to see over and over, and I don't know how many times we need to see it, because I've seen it with communism, and what it does, it leaves the gap open to totalitarianism. Is, for me, Joe, it's just as simple as this. Too many people are left out of the table right now. I know it's great that we have Steve Jobs, and I love entrepreneurs, and I look up to Steve Jobs, and I love these guys. I love what's happening at Amazon. I love it. I love it. When you love something, though, you must be able to critique it without judgment. And in this country, we cannot afford to make the same mistakes I believe the West has made. Having lived in the West, I've been very fortunate. I have to be honest with you. I've been very fortunate. I've lived in some great countries. I've lived in Switzerland. I've lived in Canada. I've lived in Germany. I've lived in Russia. I lived in the United Kingdom. Everything is about the economy, and fair enough. But that only takes us so far. When people start to feel alienated, that's what I care about. And I don't think in a world where we've become so good at producing things, right? Because this is our problem, by the way, now. Some people don't understand what an inflation is that we're so good at producing things. Nobody on this planet, right? Nobody on this planet needs to work. We're so good at producing things. What we can't do, Joe, is share well enough. And I'm not saying Bill Gates must give everyone his money. That's ridiculous. And no good Marxist would ever say that. Trust me. No good Marxist would ever say that. My God, I can't believe how offensive it is to people when I just suggest, let's get better at sharing. And I don't mean let's do it in 5 years. Let's do it now. Let's get much better at sharing now, because we have too much stuff. We have too much food.
But what do you mean by sharing? What is it exactly that you mean by sharing? Like, what must? One could argue that statement, but I want to understand what exactly do you define that? Define what you mean by let's start sharing.
Sure, I think this comes a role where our world police, the Americas, the Britons, who live better than ever, right? It's very, very clear, is the mentality to sit on trillions of dollars of cash, because we understand big industry is doing this. You don't have to like what I'm saying. You can go and look it up yourself. Why? Why is it a zero-sum game? Why is it for me as a person for you to win, I have to lose? I'll tell you why. We reduce capitalism strictly down to an economic system. And I've had this argument with a few people before. We forget that it is also a pedagogical system. So what that means is it's always teaching you what to value. And more, what it teaches you is value the thing and not the person. And that's why it's possible on the same planet where America and England and even South Africa, by the way, is guilty of it, because we're sitting on trillions of rands. Please don't be fooled. Is those types of nations can exist whilst you have a Zimbabwe next to us. And I'm sorry, it's inhumane. It is inhumane. And all I'm looking for in life, Joe, we can sit here and talk all night. Capitalism lacks humanity. And I'm sorry, I cannot back anything like that for all the great things it's done. Even if you're in a relationship, I saw a ring on your finger right now. Your wife's not always perfect. You're not always perfect to your wife. If you love something, you must critique it. And, let's be brave enough to say capitalism as it is right now, it's capitalism 1.0. Let's make it better. And I don't see a better way theoretically to critique it than Marx, because many of the shortcomings exist in Marxist writing. And if you haven't read Das Kapital, I would highly recommend it, as you would imagine.
Of course you would. Look, I hear everything you're saying, and it's fascinating. It really is. I can appreciate different ideologies, and I told you before we did this interview, I don't think you're going to convince me. And I'll be honest, you haven't.
Sure.
But again, I can appreciate your ideologies. I can level with you to some extent with, okay, maybe I can't argue the fact that there are flaws with capitalism. There's no doubt about that. We've seen it, and that maybe Marxism can help. Maybe a mix between the two can help. Fine, we'll figure it out, I guess, as human species, or as a species. But I think one thing you said now that kind of, I'm trying to remember it now. It was in my head, that I felt was a bit of a unfair thing to say, is that you seem hell bent on saying that capitalism doesn't work, that it's inhumane, I think is the word you used. One could argue that so is, again, when you pursue Marxism, when you pursue all that stuff, it's inhuman. Now I know the human aspect of it gets in the way, which is what makes it inhumane. But if we were to, and maybe I haven't done this, and maybe we need to do this, how many people has capitalism killed? Because there are people out there that say that communism has killed millions and millions and millions of people. There's countries that are suffering at the moment because of a failed economic system. And again, I know people got in the way of that, I know. But I'm struggling to imagine a world. You can have maybe one or two countries that are operating with a mix of it, but I'm struggling to see a world. You mentioned earlier open borders. There's a problem with open borders.
Whoa! Who said open borders? I just said we need to start imagining a world beyond the nation state. So open borders is a whole different conversation, Joe.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood you on that.
Okay. Yeah. Whoa. Open borders. Whoa. No. We've got 7 billion people on the planet. Come on now. Come on now. Like, no, but my point on that, because that is an important conversation, Joe, is that what we must realize, and what I love right now, is there was a time when it was just presumed that democracy and capitalism meant the same thing. But what we're starting to see is a divorce between the two, right? Because what's happening is power is going local, which is why you hear some of the language of our politicians. But the economy is going global. And the politicians don't know what to do about me being able to do business on PayPal with somebody in Taiwan. Because all money is portable power. And now we're starting to see something interesting. All I'm saying is, if you are imbibed into a certain way of thinking about money, is to hoard to the death, which is the capitalist way, I'm afraid, whether you like it or not. You're imbibed from 3-4 years old. It's a zero-sum game. In order for those who don't know what a zero-sum game is in order for me to win, you have to lose. And that's not the way life is. And to another point, sorry to cut you off. There is no place, by the way, in the world that is absolutely capitalist, just to be clear, right? There is mixed market economy everywhere. So there is socialist and Marxist and communist ideals in the countries we venerate the most. Roads you drive on, the bridges, it is everywhere. So for me, Joe, I resent that every conversation it's in it's the extremes. My God, if you're not America, you're Stalin. And that's like, and I told you, we were talking about it before. It's why I don't really do it too much in public. Is that it's a hot button topic. It's a hot button topic, and I like it for that sense. In the private sense, is that somewhere in the middle, as with everything in life. For God's sake, I carry this as my Bible. It evokes the human side of me. Is that, as with everything in life, do not tell me capitalism will be perfect to its extremes, and no good communist or Marxist a modern day citizen with a caring heart will ever tell you that communism and Marxism to its extreme is the solution, right? All I'm saying, and I haven't convinced you, is that you have Marxism at the center and capitalism as the help, instead of the way we're doing it now, where we're trying to, in the Fukuyama notion, gay people can get married, more black people here, in America, bring in a few more Hispanic people into the, and I think there's a conflation always of a lot of things. If I'm this way economically, I will be this way financially. It's silly to think these things. Yeah. Nobody is one thing, Joe. But anyway, my point is, for me, Marxism at the center, and I'm sure there's that is something people will not hate. And by the way, Marxism can evolve, people. I know it's 2020, so I'm aware of that.
I like that. Marxism can evolve. That should be a hashtag. All right. So I think I want to, because I only have 10 minutes of your time. So I would like to get to the comments.
Hey, we got time.
Oh, well, if the people want us to continue, I'll go on. But I like to keep the show to an hour because I like people to watch. Because if it's over an hour, people seem to be scared. It doesn't get as much views. But I want to take a moment, Mbulelo, and thank you for once again for coming onto the show and having this discussion with me. I wanted to do this to show people that people with opposite sides of ideologies can still have a conversation and not hate each other. And I think that's an important message for people to take out of this, whether you're on the left side or the right side. Mbulelo, you are a great guy. I've noticed in the conversations that you and I have had together. And I'd still go and have a beer with you in a capitalist society, no problem.
Oh, well, listen, that would depend if I own all of the means of production.
You see.
But just before we finish, I need to be clear. Miss Cortez, who's causing all sorts of ruckus in America, I admire her, and I don't agree with all her policies and her wishes and whatever. Because, sorry, to be clear, I'm very left. I'm as left as you're going to get. By the way, hey, listen, there's nothing that's off the table with me. I am so liberal. I'm not a liberal, but in my views, I probably will sicken people in how liberal I am. Right? I like homophobia makes me sick. Racism makes me sick. I don't know. Go down all of them. I don't know what phobias I do have, but I hope I have none. I'm uber liberal. I need to be very clear in one thing right now: is the great failure is my people on the left. Is what used to be considered the left's way, intellectual, putting your ideas across with strength, not defending your ideas. So my thing, I feel very secure in saying what I say because I have no problem defending my ideas intellectually.
Yes.
And in the intellect, I hope we can have a better world. But I don't need you to feel less and crumbled as a person. So because you're not capitalism, Joe. As I look at you, you're a person, right? Now the ideas and the we always go pathological, and people get upset. The left has failed. The left has failed and become brittle. And why I love Miss Cortez for all her shortcomings, she's human, is that she is showing a side that I love. Just because I'm left, don't think you can come and mess with me. I love strength. Why have we left it to the right to be the only people that can have power, that can withstand critique, that can absorb critique, that can move forward through, this is the win. This is why Trump wins, right? Is he absorbs the critique and he chugs on. That is what the human spirit is about, right? So if you're going to be a Marxist, if you're going to be a leftist, don't crumble at the first sign of critique. Because listen to me, right? As my fellow left brethren, is life is not owed to you. So don't come and tell me that just because you're offended, you're right. I will not tolerate that. It is the great failure of the left, and it has been eroding for the last 20, 30 years. And I will not be associated with that. We need strength on the left. We need people that are going to fight when the fight comes and not crumble and not go to hashtags always, because nobody wants to be racist ideally. Nobody wants to be homophobic ideally. Those aren't left or right ideas. Everybody wants to raise their kids in a safe place. Those aren't left and right ideas. What you cannot do, because democracy is a messy business, just because I'm offended, I'm on the left, and we tend to argue for the softer stuff. When the critique comes, you crumble and then you want to cry and play the victim. I will have no more of it, Joe. So for me, I think that you must understand my philosophical and sort of political position is left, and that it stands there. But it is not the left that will cower. So I may be Marxist, but I will not be blown over. I'm not gonna do a hashtag against Joe.
No, well, that's the thing. Like, that's why. I mean, again, like you, I've never met someone on the left that is like you, because you like everything you just said is basically like the woke. Like the people who do those things that you are talking about, that's the woke. And I've always said, like, there's a difference between woke left and
Yeah.
left.
Fuck you.
I've said that many times on my shows. Like, and I regard the woke as like an extreme radical left.
Mental.
Yeah.
Like Seattle guys, or what are they called? The guys in Seattle that blocked off that city.
Chad, the Chadsters, the chopped, whatever.
Oh, yeah. Mental. What it is mental.
Which again makes the conversation interesting. All right, so let's get to some comments quickly. Dagabrekker says, please ask Umbelo's view regarding inheritance, legacy, leaving something for your children, or should all go back into circulation?
Great question. So for those who don't know, that question, needs a bit of context, because Marx, for those who don't know, suggested that at the
if you're new to my channel, please consider
private land ownership should be taken away. So it's one of the tenets. There's a list. I can send it to you. It's in the great book. It is in the great book, as the people might say on Sundays in church. Is that no inheritance should go on? Of course, it was a bourgeoisie thing. A very, very good question. I think it doesn't need to be as much as possible. But once again, I don't think we're at a stage in humanity, whether capitalist or Marxist. And if you're making me choose, I would probably go with the Marxist, as nobody needs to inherit anything in this world. But we don't live in a society where I feel we've got the administrative tools, even in Switzerland, for goodness sake, to ensure that the society will see the full benefits of that. So in the real world, no. But if I were the Lord Emperor of the world, absolutely. There would be inheritance would be one of the first things to go. Like, you don't need any hand-downs from your parents.
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. That's going to have to be for another day.
And by the way, I come from an upper middle class family, so I understand that I argue from a position where even if I don't get an inheritance, I've had a great life.
Okay. So Vinko Solda has a comment here saying Marxism has destroyed family and religion. People need those and therefore replace it with ideology.
Well, I mean, so I might argue, what was that gentleman's name or lady?
Vinko.
Well, Vinko, I might argue the opposite. Capitalism has eroded because there is a new god in town. It's money. So I might say it's the other way, because God has given way for capital. So I might argue completely the other way and say, in fact, the other way, in a Marxist sense, you might have more community and more people might lean towards a church setup, if you will. So for me, and to be honest, I'm an atheist, so not the worst thing that church has been moved aside. But I would argue that capitalism has eroded the church more than any communist state ever will, because money is God now.
Yeah, well, that's again another something I do agree that the church has money has affected church in a certain way, and I please, people, do not take my head off because of that. There's a lot of people that feel that way. I am a Christian. I believe in the Lord, the good Lord. But also Jesus preached that we should open our hearts to everyone, which is why I'm having this conversation with Mbulelo. He might be an atheist, but that doesn't mean I'm going to shun him or say that he needs to go to hell or anything like that. So let's just keep the peace on that one.
Yes, please don't condemn me to hell.
Yeah. So Jeff is asking, wait, let me just get this right. Did he say inheritance should be done away with if it was left to him?
If I was the overlord of the world? Yes, because if I was the overlord of the world, you would have private school education level for everyone. I would, don't worry about it. We'd live in Switzerland. I would try and get, my utopia is Switzerland, Sweden. So what more do you need than unbelievable schooling, organic food in your fridge, clean roads, and safe streets? You'd have all of that already. Why do you need a leg up?
Fair enough. And if it was an inheritance given to you by your parents?
Are we talking in a real world right now?
Yeah.
Uh,
Give both the sides.
well, in my utopia, you don't need it. So if you're going to make it in my utopia, your education will be paid for. You're fine. You've got a Harvard level education anyway, getting you through the first 25 years of your life. And if you're that guy, you're going to get a part-time job, just like everybody should, right? And you're going to get on with it. In the real world, I understand that, unfortunately, the thing is, in life, in all of life, there's a reason why there's the 1%, and it's not just about money. Is certain people are willing to do the tough things. Success breeds success. And I'm afraid in the world we live in and the way it's constructed, it is top down. I don't think we can cancel it right now. Otherwise, who knows where the money's going? We don't have the transparency to say, okay, it's going to go from the rich guy in Seattle to the single woman in Somalia yet. So no, of course not. Of course not in the real world right now. I don't think we've developed the tools.
And Blakeman says, Joe Emilio, please ask if you, Mbulelo, believes in small government. Do you believe the government should own all property?
I absolutely do not. I think that's one of the things that Marx made a mistake on, and he's been critiqued on this. So it's not just I'm not reinventing the wheel. I've read and continue to read many critiques of Marx himself. No, I think, especially we live in a different world now. Absolutely not. No, we now have established sort of methods of, and they can get better in who owns land and that. Absolutely not. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Let me just find it.
It was
again.
the land and?
Should you own land? Where is it? Oh, I've lost it now. Sorry. Inheritance thing. I said that. I'm almost there. Okay, so the first one was, do you believe in small government?
No. Okay, so no. So this is where people always think I'm crazy. No, I don't. Because you know why? I'll tell you why it's ridiculous. Small government. And I'm not obsessed with big or small government. Because what you need is efficient government. You look at Canada, they've got a tiny government. But everybody in there, you better bloody believe you better pull your weight. So what I'm interested in, to the gentleman or lady who asked that question, is I'm interested in effective government. Norway, Sweden, Canada, once again, effective government. I don't care about the numbers. Let's make it more technological, because I don't want to worry about getting my own water at the well. Get that out the way. I want an invisible sort of system over there that's reliable, that does all that stuff for me. I don't want to build my own roads. I want to go and paint. I want to go and talk to Joe about Kantian ethics. I don't want to do all that stuff. So absolutely, small government, get that out of here. That's 1850 thinking. I've said already, 20th century's over. Yeah. Can't afford to think like that anymore.
So Jeff says, bruh, your utopia will never be reality. And no, it isn't top down in all cases. Leadership roles have developed since top down, in quotation marks. Dude ain't a straight talker. It's vague.
Look, listen, I had a father who lived in Finland and I don't know if that person's been to Finland. Trust me, the utopia exists. Believe you me, the utopia is not a dream. It is here. Finland and Sweden are real. I've lived in both countries. I've spent a lot of time with high-level intellectuals from both places. The utopia is here. The great Marcus Aurelius said, just because something is difficult for you, do not presume it impossible for another. So the utopia is here. I'm not talking about something that doesn't exist.
But wouldn't people just argue that that's not the true utopia, though? Because again, it's socialism with a bit of, or capitalism with a bit of socialism. Because that's also the argument that I've heard. That it's not, like if you talk about, again, it's that argument that you said at the beginning, like, are we talking about the old Marxism, or are we talking about the modern Marxism? Yeah, I guess that answers my own question.
Sure. No, but great. I mean, great point. Great
point. Yeah, I think we covered this. Under what circumstances would Marxism work in South Africa? That's a very that's
none.
Yeah, none.
We've covered that.
Yeah, covered that.
And I'm not afraid for people to be critical. By the way, if you believe in your ideas, I'm saying if you believe in your ideas in life, ford the river, right? You ford the river is if you believe it, and I believe my ideas, and critique them or they will. And this is the beauty of intellectual argument. This is how, by the way, the world gets better. Everything must be critiqued. I don't care which side you're on. be willing to take criticism. If you want a good body, what do? You go to the gym. That is critiquing your body. You feel a bit of pain, right? I need to work on my upper body strength. So you must be willing to withstand fierce criticism, and I love it. It's the way the world moves forward.
Yes. All right, so I'm gonna just say very quickly that maybe we'll call it in the next 5 minutes, because again, I don't want it to go too long. But if there's any question that I haven't gotten to, please, because there's been a lot of comments. If I go back, I'm going to spend my whole time now going back. So if there's any question that someone still has that I didn't get to, please just copy paste, put it in, and we'll get to it right now. You have 5 minutes to do so. And yeah, so besides that, if you can do it in 60 seconds, it would be great.
Sure.
Why don't you like Dallas Cowboys?
Oh, listen here. Jerry Jones, I've got such a big problem with him. Haven't won a championship in 25 years, and Jerry keeps talking about America's team, right? I'm a Vikings fan. These guys in college came to Port Elizabeth. I am sick of Jerry talking about America's team. Jerry, you haven't done anything in 25 years. Get that out of here. Get that nonsense out of here. You've done nothing. And pay Dak Prescott, because that man's got you. He did more than Tony Romo ever did to you. You paid Tony up front. So listen, I don't like Jerry. I mean, I love Jerry the businessman. I hate Jerry and the Dallas Cowboys side of things, because the Vikings is where it's at. And they've done nothing in 25 years. You're not America's team. There we go.
Fair enough, man. I haven't been in touch with American football in quite some time. But back when I was there, I remember my dad was very much a Dallas Cowboy fan. I don't know if he still is. Houston, though. Whatever they seem to be okay.
Yeah, they got Deshaun Watson at quarterback, a new superstar. So Patrick Mahomes, by the way, just got paid $500 million, first $500 million contract. He plays for Kansas City Chiefs. But Houston's got a guy. They got J.J. Watt, the great J.J. Watt, of course. But then they got the next guy who's about to get paid, Deshaun Watson. Phenomenal.
Fantastic.
Phenomenal quarterback, yeah.
So guys, if you enjoy Mbulelo, please check him out on Cliff Central, the sports section. He clearly knows a lot about sports. It's his life. And he's a very active guy. So some questions have come in So Nathan Brooks, who's actually a good friend of mine, if we had to adopt the Marxist ideologies now, what do you think a Marxist communist system should avoid in order to break free of the mistakes from the past?
So I think I've got a very short answer for that. Is that don't presume the best side of people is what will always come out. So for me, that's what so let's work from there always. All systems should always be there thinking, oh my God, things are going to go tragically wrong right now. So for me, it's a short answer is presume the worst is going to happen. Unlike Marx, who presumed the best of people, and we saw where that went. Yeah.
Good answer. The Swedish model is only possible because of their low spend on defense, which is largely covered by USA. That's just a statement.
No. And so fair statement, but it's also based on, let's be honest, we kind of leave out a little terrorist insurgency they had little, we call them the Vikings now because it's fun because it was 800 years ago. But one thing they did was they got rich first. That also helps. That back in the day, you went to the UK and pillaged a little, and you took some of the church's stuff and you took it home. So there's deeper reasons than just what we see today.
Okay. Jeff once again saying, please have this guy again sometime. He's entertaining as fuck.
That's awesome.
That's the same guy that was asking you the inheritance stuff. Okay. So Doc Brecker saying, fun guest. Thank you. So yeah, you've got some people. Okay, so here we go. Swearum DJ. Weird name. How does he think we can change towards a utopian world without war? I mean, I don't think war was brought into it.
No, but you know, so I have a mother who worked in the space, the international space of sort of war spaces throughout Africa. And she worked for the beloved United Nations for a while. You know, once we change the narrative, and I don't know, this is rather utopian, and I don't like the word utopia. There is no utopia. Democracy is a brutal business because you have to pitch up every day. There is no utopia, folks. There is no utopia. Some of the utopias we've described are my utopias. the reality is this. I imagine we can get better at putting people at the center instead of money. That's not going to reduce our money, by the way. We look at the companies that have gone people first, and we've seen what it's done for the bottom line. So I don't think I'm suggesting something insane. I really don't. But we must change. We must change, in my belief.
And then we've got another one here. Acid Zill is asking, death sentence for crimes. What's your opinion?
Great question. I love it. Has he said what crime there?
You just said crimes.
All right. So I'll tell you, I vehemently disagree with the death sentence anyway. I have a huge problem with it. I have a litany of reasons, but I will give you the main one. I cannot abide a government that displays that kind of violence to the society and then asks the very same society not to resort to violence itself. I cannot. There is a deeply insidious cognitive disjunct in that thinking, and it is for me. You cannot put yourself in that moral quagmire. So no, I cannot abide you showing me that type of violence and telling me it's not an option for me when things go wrong.
Interesting. I am not sure what to say about that. But it's an interesting thought. It's definitely an interesting thought. Okay, so this is the last question, because again, I don't want it to go too long. But this is a sports question for you.
Let's go. Let's go.
So this is from Peter Sawanga, a fellow comedian, who's asking, who is his favorite sportscaster?
Oh man, that is such a good question. So I go Premier League football and then NFL football when we talk in order, but I love all sport. But my favorite is a man who's just retired, Peter Brackley. He was a commentator in the football scene. I think that's him. But one that's current, John Champion. So if you watch Premier League football, I believe John Champion is the kid. And I mean, what an apt name, right? Yeah. John Champion. So it's John Champion presents in the Premier League.
Fantastic. All right. So Peter also says he is probably one of only 2 communists that I like.
Listen, we get it to 3, we'll start nationalizing that number. Let's go, Joe. This has been awesome.
All right, so Mbulelo, once again, thank you so much for coming. Look, I hope you'll come back. I think we started something here, and I hope you'll be on my show again. If people want to see, look, anybody that watches this in the future, please comment. Let me know. Do you want to see Mbulelo again? I'll go back in the comments and see if there's any questions I may have missed. We'll discuss it. I think these kind of discussions are healthy. Again, I'm not advocating for Marxism or anything like that, but I want to understand it. I do. I have a curious mind, and I want to understand it. Does it mean that I'm now going to switch? Don't know. Don't think so. I believe in capitalism very much, and yes, there are faults with it and stuff like that. But I want to make that clear. I'm not. I want people to know after watching this, like having Mbulelo on the show wasn't to. Okay, maybe he was trying to convince people to switch.
No, sorry.
But but I really just wanted to have an open discussion about those ideologies. I feel it's important, and there's a lot of people, like you mentioned, Mbulelo, that the woke left are just a bit too extreme about it, and they actually hurt the left more than anything else. So I felt like you were a reliable source to have an open discussion with, and I cannot thank you enough, and I respect you immensely because, like you said, you're open to the criticism, you're open to the discussion, and you are happy to talk about these things because of what you believe in. And I have the utmost respect for you. So thank you very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And, hey, brother, Godspeed to you with what you're doing in the digital space, and you're spreading positivity. So more power to it, bro. And more power to open conversations. Let's not be afraid, right or left. Don't be afraid to be criticized, and it's not going to kill you. So thank you for creating the platform. I mean, this is a conversation that wouldn't happen in many spaces. I'm eternally grateful for this opportunity. And to everybody listening at home, agree or disagree, this isn't just a cheesy throwaway line. I appreciate you taking your time, because you could be doing anything, but you've decided to join us. So I'm humbled that you had me on the show, and I'm humbled that people took their time to engage with something they may or may not agree with, and we may love each other as human beings moving forward regardless.
Exactly. Well, Mbulelo, thank you so much. Don't hang up just yet as I sign off. I'll give you a proper goodbye on Skype. So ladies and gentlemen, Mbulelo, tuning in and joining me today on the show. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, give it a share. Please subscribe to my channel if you're new. And go check him out on Cliff Central, Cliff Sports, where he presents the sports. And as you can tell, he's a big sports fanatic. So, ladies and gentlemen, have a good night. Stay safe. Be kind to one another. And I'll see you at the next one. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and a share. That's how my content gets out there. Also, don't be afraid to comment. I usually do respond to the comments in the comment section below. If you want to support my channel, please go to the link in the description below, support my channel, and you'll be taken to my website, which has all the details. Also, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, feel free to check out the links below to my social media accounts. Give me a follow, and I'll see you at the next one.